back to Guitar Landscapes. Today we're on page 42 and we're going to be talking about dyads. The first chord that we're going to take a look at is called the E5 chord, and it has two notes in it. It has the E note in it and it has the 5 in it, which is the B note, thus the name E5. Now this chord has no third in it, so technically it's not even really a chord. A chord should have 3 different notes in it to be a chord, and this just has E and B. And you could also add the other E above it if you'd like. I'm kind of borrowing with my first finger there at the 2nd fret, so I'm playing the bottom 3 strings. Or you can just play the bottom 2. Either one is fine, but that still gives you that sound of a power chord. Now power chords can be a little tricky when you're learning to analyze a song or try to figure out what scale works over a particular chord progression. When you just look at a bunch of power chords, it's a little hard sometimes to see the major key that you're playing in. Let's take harmonized C major scale and just root, 5th, root. So here we go. Now when I play those, there's really only one chord that has a different shape than the others, and that is the 7th chord. So we got C, D, E, F, G, A, and those are all 5th chords until we get to the B, which has a flatted 5th. And that's because we have to stay diatonic, so we're using an F instead of an F sharp. You hear that that actually kind of steps out of the key if we were to do that. So we keep the F in there instead, and then we're back to C. Now, all of those chords have one key in common, and that's the key of C major. And that C major scale would fit over all of those chords, but sometimes when we're looking at a chord progression, we're only seeing 2 or 3 of the chords, and we have to make a determination what would be the proper scale to play over those. For instance, if I was just to play C, D, E, and F, within those 4 chords are all the notes that are in the C major scale, and so by playing those 4 chords, I've defined the key. So if I took the notes in each one of those chords and wrote them out alphabetically, I would have a C major scale. I'd have a C, a D, an E, and an F, and then going back here I'd have the G, the A, the B, and then I'm back up to the C again. So it would have all of the notes of the C major scale. But what if you're only dealing with a couple of the chords? So for instance, what if you come across a chord progression where it's just going that only defines part of the scale because we're only playing 3 chords. If we were playing 4 different chords from the key of C, we could identify the whole key. So sometimes you have to look at, well, what is the singer singing? What is the bass player singing? Is there a keyboard part? Is that contributing to the harmony of the key? Now, as a soloist, as an improviser, I can determine what scale I want to play over that and see which one works. In that particular case, I'm going to be playing some kind of a minor sounding scale. But I can play the C major scale over it and it's going to sound like I'm playing a D minor scale over it. Let me show you what I mean. So all I was playing through that was the C major scale. Now obviously I was skipping around and I was playing the scale in different places and using string bends and slides and things like that to embellish it, but it was still just the notes of the C major scale. And the reason I determined that would work is because D5, E5, and F5 all belong to the key of C. And the way you can know that is there's almost always a clue in the chord progression, and the big clue in this chord progression is when the E5 goes to the F5. And there's a half step between those two chords, just like in the major scale. And so those two chords only occur in the C major scale. A C5, or I'm sorry, an E5 and an F5 are only a half step apart in the C major scale. Now, we know we have a half step between B and C, but the difference is between B and C, we also have that F note in the middle going to C. Now, I could play that chord progression as well. I'm just going to play it lower. And if I use that to improvise over, it's still going to be a C major scale, but remember we're using two different chords now. We're using B5, or B with a flatted fifth, and C5. Different chord progression, but the C major scale will still work. And it sounds a little unusual just when you hear these two chords, but let's give it a shot. Well, I hope that helps you see how even over an unusual sounding chord like this chord going to the C5, what you're getting is you're defining harmony. And so when you play the scale over that predefined harmony, it's going to give you a certain sound and effect, which is different than the sound and effect that we got when we used these three chords. The D minor to E to F had its specific sound, and then this, E flat 5 going to the C5, had a specific sound. So the C major scale worked over both because the harmony comes from both. Now when you're looking at a chord progression that's new to you, you need to learn to quickly kind of analyze and understand how those chords are functioning. So in the case of most rock songs, you're going to have a bunch of 5 chords. So you just need to learn to look at those 5 chords, and that'll tell you a lot about what's going on in the song. For instance, if I see, as I was saying earlier, E5 going to F5, I know that's going to be a 3 chord going to a 4 chord. It doesn't matter where it is. So if I'm here, for instance, not to confuse matters, but if I go from B5 to C5, that only occurs in the key of G because of the presence of the F sharp. So you see what I mean? The chords quickly can define for you the harmony that needs to be played. So I hope this helps you in understanding how this works. The best way to go through this is memorize your harmonized major scales and understand that they're all going to be power chords except for the 7 chord, which is going to have the flatted fifth interval. So have fun. Remember, music's supposed to be fun. So have a good time, enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next video.